Hi all, good morning or good evening. I saw some messages come in from Canada and other places as well. Um, my name is Suraj, and I'm based in Melbourne. Um, I am the founder of an Indian coffee business called the KAAPI Project, or for short, KAAPI. Um, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I came to do whatever I'm doing now, with basically a background in automotive engineering and research and that sort of stuff. Anyway, let's get started. Got some slides prepared just so that I don't go completely off topic and then start blabbering stuff, which has no value. So anyway, just give me a second. Can everyone see my screen now? Yeah, cool. So yeah, my formal training has been in engineering. And I did mechanical engineering in India and then moved to Melbourne in 2009. Sorry, in 2000, yeah, 2009, and did my master's degree at RMIT. Worked for some time for Deakin as a researcher, Deakin Uni, and then moved back to India and worked in the automotive industry for about 2 years, which was like my dream job. So I wanted to move back and wanted to work in that industry, and yeah, and find out what all the fuss is about. I have been obsessed about cars and tech and all that growing up, so I always wanted to be an automotive engineer. So I did that for about 2 years, and that was a lot of fun. But then when things were starting to get a little um, boring, I thought of moving back to Melbourne with my wife. So we moved in 2014. I was open to finding something um, to do in Melbourne when I was back. Didn't really have a plan. I just wanted to get away from working for someone, and or maybe not working for someone, but I didn't really want to work for a big corporation, or that's what I thought at the time. So I moved back to Melbourne in 2014, and that's when I was part of a rickshaw startup. uh, Co-founded that, and we operated that for about 5 years. Along the way, I started diversifying my skills. I started doing some startup consulting for other startups and other small businesses, helping them with the skills that I was starting to um, learn by working in the rickshaw startup. And then in 2014, because I was always passionate about coffee and food and everything, and I wanted to always get into the hospitality industry, but I just didn't know how to and didn't know anything about it. So after doing some freelance consulting and doing some work in the startup, I was more confident to step into doing a little more gutsy in the coffee capital of the world, without really having any background in coffee or anything like that. So that was in 2017. So that's just me at the manufacturing plant back in India, and that's the rickshaw business that we ran in Fitzroy and Collingwood for a while. We were called Bike Cabs, and then that's me doing a long pour of the Indian filter coffee. Um, oops. So what is KAAPI all about? So the business is called the KAAPI Project, but just like everything that gets shortened in Australia, I didn't want people to be saying the KAAPI Project every time. So the short version of the KAAPI Project is just KAAPI. We are Melbourne's first locally roasted and traditionally brewed Indian filter coffee, uh, a style of coffee that has been around for a few centuries in India. And just a quick question. Can you see my screen fully, or can you see the video? Video windows on the right hand side blocking the text out. Just, oh, sorry, just one second. Can't seem to find where my mouse is. There you go. I'll just hide this video screen. That's better. So yeah, so this is a style of coffee that's been around in India for more than a few centuries. So the idea was to bring this old Indian coffee culture to the fore. So in India, we've got over 27 odd registered languages and over 1,000 dialects. But down south, if you can see the map of India with all the red dots on there down south, that's where all the coffee grows. That's the coffee growing region of India. And down south, although we've got different languages in each state, the word kapi still means coffee. So that's why we chose to call what we're doing the Kapi project, because it was bringing the Indian coffee culture to Melbourne, or to down under. Um, so what's different? Well, to begin with, the blend itself that we do is very different. Pre-COVID, we only had the chicory coffee blend, which is more unique. It has sort of a French origin, because the French territories back in the day, when India was a colony, that was the time when the French were starting to mix chicory into coffee to extend the coffee supplies, and that's how it started getting into the Indian households, and people started loving the taste so much, and that's what a lot of people associate Indian filter coffee with, it being a chicory coffee blend. So pre-COVID, that was the only signature blend that we had. And then coming into this, since the lockdown started and India went into lockdown, and we have direct trade for some of the chicory and coffee that we get from India. So all of our shipments got delayed. So that's when we started introducing the pure coffee blend, which we call Yodha, because that just like a warrior, this is what gave us a fighting chance when our signature blend completely went out of stock, and there were a lot of customers who were asking about it, and we really couldn't do anything about it. Chakram means wheel, so just like how wheel was, it marked um, a leap in civilization when it was invented. The addition of chicory changed the way coffee was drunk, at least in India as well. More accessible to a lot more people, because coffee as a commodity was limited at the time, and chicory just came along and extended the supplies, and then the taste sort of took over, and all that. So we've got two house blends which are unique. And then we also use a very traditional brewing style, using an Indian filter pot to brew the coffee. And the brew itself is espresso strength, as opposed to what you would imagine a filter brew to be, which is more light and fruity and floral. In the serving style, I've just got a small clip of me doing a long pour. So that's pretty much how a traditional Indian filter coffee is served. So the long pour is to actually aerate the milk manually. So we actually steam the milk on the stove top, or we've got a steamer to actually do it, which makes the milk scalding hot. So it's not like a latte, which is frothed to about 65 degrees Celsius, and then with which you can actually do a latte art. This is hot scalding milk. So the long pour sort of helps to cool it down and creates that wonderful texture of milk as well. And that's just a little bit of the decoction that I just, or the coffee concentrate that I just poured over the coffee, just to, give it a bit of color, and that's to add a little bit of strength. So when you take your first sip, you sort of get that that hit. But the coffee itself isn't very strong caffeine content wise because of the chicory in it. So this is actually a signature blend that I'm long pouring. And then we've also got what we call the cotton kapi. So I'm from down south in India. I'm from a state called Kerala. So in Kerala, cotton means black. So you get both cotton kapi, which is black coffee, and you get cotton chaya, which is black tea. So the black coffee is what we call cotton kapi. We've got a classic and a spiced version as well. So this year is to just give. This is something that we always end up talking to a lot of newbies who ask us. So what's the Indian filter coffee? Because a lot of the time, people who drink lattes and espressos, they're like, when we tell them that we've got Indian filter coffee, they're like, oh no, I don't want the filter coffee. And then we end up telling them that no, well, the filter coffee that you know of is a bit different from the filter coffee that we do. So this is just to give you a very basic rundown on what the differences are in terms of the roast style of the coffees that we generally use to the brew strength. And so but so yeah, that's the main difference. And we also package the coffee concentrate in ready to use sort of pouches, freshly brewed. And you can see the color of the coffee; it's quite strong. Um, so this is bike cabs. This is the bike rickshaw business that uh, we did, or I helped co-found in 2014. Um, and we had a fleet of rickshaws and a few tandem bikes. And so uh, my business partner Tim, he's an industrial designer, and with my background in engineering and operations, we did try and bring a little bit of our design um, you know thinking and design skills into the business. So it was not purely just a fun, like a tour service. To begin with, the idea was to make it a short fare taxi service, like how it is back in Asian countries, where people would just, put their hand up and say, rickshaw, and then, would stop and get like a short fare from A to B to places which are a bit far for you to walk up, but not far enough for you to take, let's say, a taxi or a bus or a tram or whatever. So so we started as a short fare taxi service. Then we sort of slowly grew into doing tours, and so that's actually a hens party pickup that you can see on the top right. And then we also like modified a tandem bike to make it like a small like a single passenger pickup bike. That idea didn't really take off for whatever reason, but it was fun trying it out. So that's one of our interns on there. So we modified the bike, and there's a handle and a footrest and everything. So we used to call it the Ninja. We did try it out for a few events. It was funny when we rocked up on a tandem passenger bike for some of our clients who were, definitely not expecting to climb on one of these. They were expecting just the rickshaw. And we rocked up with 3 rickshaws and a tandem bike. And we were like, the extra person can actually go on the tandem bike. And it was fun. So this was, and then we also had, so just play the clip of the Hens Party transfer. So this is in Fitzroy. And people just loved what, the kind of fun traveling on a rickshaw was. And then us dinging the bell, and like we would just get a lot of people to turn around and look at what the heck this was. And then it just brought a lot of joy even to the passengers, because it's not something a lot of the people in the West are exposed to, especially traveling in closed cars, and unless if you're on a bike yourself, but then you're not sitting like this and sort of just enjoying the ride without actually doing any of the riding. And then we also had, like we used to call it the skinniest rickshaw in the world, because I'm sure nobody else in the world really wanted to do it for whatever reason. But this was fun. So this is basically, we used to call it the skinny. It was narrower than a regular wide rickshaw, and this was actually shot in Collingwood, just to show how it could go, between two buildings. So this was about zero point 0.9 meters wide, the rickshaw, just enough so that it wouldn't tip over when you are actually going at a good speed, going into a corner. So that was bike cabs. We ended up then diversifying our services. We used to do street art rickshaw tours around Fitzroy and Collingwood, which is very popular. That's, I don't know if you can make out from the picture, that's Jessica Maboy. So we did a lot of gigs like that. It was just fun for people to, to sort of book us for such events and just to transfers from A to B. So it was starting to get a little more gimmicky than we wanted it to be honest. But then we also ended up being like a crucial service to cameramen, to put their camera setup on the bike and to shoot slow moving talent running on bike paths and in areas where you couldn't really have other cars, other vehicles to actually shoot the talent. And also camera reels are quite expensive to just for small gigs. And so this was a cool thing to do, and we had an electric rickshaw specifically meant to do that, which could actually move at a constant speed of say 10 15 or 15 20 kilometer per hour, so that we could just follow steadily. We used to do weddings, photo shoots, and more than anything, it was a great opportunity for us to meet all these different types of people and engage with a lot of different styles of industries. And personally, for me, it was a major. I mean, it was one of the ways I actually ended up meeting a lot of interesting people who then went on to become, very good friends of mine and also mentors in a lot of ways. So this was bike cabs, and we sold the business in 2019. So how did I go from being an engineer, to doing rickshaws and then KAAPI? So, well, this is in 2014 June, when I got back to Melbourne after working in the automotive industry for a while. So, and I literally knew no one in the city, which is funny because I did my master's here, but most of my classmates were international students, and most of them had left. There was this one guy with whom I had done one sustainable energy class in RMIT, Mark, and he was still in town. So I reached out to him and said, "Hey, we should catch up." And he said, "Why don't we catch up for drinks?" And then I said, "That's fine." And last minute, he changed the venue. He said, instead of meeting at this pub in the city, he said, "Why don't we meet up at the startup pitch? I've got a friend who's doing a startup pitch, and he's asked me to bring a friend." I said, "That's fine." And I thought about it twice. I didn't actually know what a startup pitch was, funnily enough, because it was said to, he told me this in an email, and it's the way he said it, I didn't really get what he meant. So anyway, I turned up, and I got introduced to Tim, who was at the time thinking about doing the rickshaw business, and he had a few slides, and he was doing a presentation. And at the end of the presentation, we ended up talking, and with my background in automotive and sustainable energy, I was keen to sort of find out what he wanted to do, and maybe help out if he needed some help, which he wanted, obviously, because he really did not have anyone to help him out with a lot of the stuff that goes on into building a business from an idea. So I just started volunteering, with no real expectation. I was still looking out for a full-time job, because I never went. No one in my family is actually, immediate family has actually done or gone into business, or done anything which was which was different from, like most of them had science backgrounds. My mom and my dad, everybody has got a science or a tech background, and nobody's done business. And so I never even thought about going into such a field, or even going into something a little more creative and things like that. So I guess I was smitten by the cool startup bug to begin with. And like that's where we used to do a lot of the work in the early days. My table was was pretty much a foosball table. So working in the in industry from doing this was clearly very cool. Like it's not something that I did for a good part of my like college, uni, and my work life until then. So um, so I started considering the switch. Well, obviously, um, my slides just frozen up. Oh, there you go. So early on, there were a lot of challenges, as you can imagine. So this was more like a creative sort of venture, and that my formal education was in a very different domain. I wasn't sure whether I had the skills and know-how, and obviously there was no or little job certainty, and then that obviously versus the euphoria of actually being in a startup and working on ideas and trying things out and seeing things happen very quickly, go from idea to trying it out. Because in a big company, you do a lot of research, and then maybe 10% of it actually makes it into the final product. Whereas here you're like, today, one day morning, you're like, oh, let's try this. And then you're already working on it. And the next day you're, actually putting it into, you're actually trying it out in real. So, and then I got a lot of who goes from working in engineering R&D to riding a rickshaw. And a lot of people didn't get it. Not that even I got it for a bit. I was happy to be doing something very different to begin with, and doing that I got a lot of exposure. And I think that exposure is what led me to have a lot more audacious goals, because without the exposure you don't really know what can be done and what other people are doing. This sort of gives you a little bit of you can say wings to actually try out things that you never thought you could do. Anyway, so fast forward a few years. Some of the old challenges were replaced by some new ones, and then obviously I was a bit more confident having done this, and then I started drawing parallels from my relatively different formal education, um, because like I sort of started realizing that a lot of things like done in one industry, but then a lot of things can be emulated into another industry, which did not come to me naturally in the beginning. But then I started seeing some patterns, like in things that we used to do in research, or like in product development, or and things like that. It's very similar even when you start doing product development for coffee, or it's there are a lot of parallels that you can draw. Then obviously I had a slightly clearer why as to why I wanted to do something on my own, and work in something like this, than actually have a very clear job certainty. And I was more clear on why I wanted to do this, and it was not just the fun of, or the feeling of just being in a startup, or doing something on my own. But then obviously there were new skills and know-how that I did not have, and I had to upskill. Um, it was a new industry, and and surprise, not a big surprise now, but hospitality industry wasn't that hospitable as I thought it was. Like it's just like any other industry. It's very closed. there are some people who have been very helpful without actually, looking at, like, because people look at your background and they're like, you're probably just mucking around, you won't be here in a year's time. So why would we spend time to tell you what we know? And but there are others who actually, give you a lot of, advice and mentoring and all that. And although, the idea was that I knew that, being the coffee capital of the world, Melbourne would definitely have room for what I was thinking about. But as you know, there are more than 100 local, meaning Melbourne based, and other Aussie roasters, small and big. There are even few boutique roasters who just supply to maybe one cafe or two cafes or whatever. So um, here the competition was also really high. I mean, um, and hospitality as an industry has a much higher burn rate. You can easily spend a lot of money before even, um, finding out whether your service or product is going to work. So I wanted to try and, um, you know focus on, KAAPI being a product first business and the service second, because service entails more investment. uh, Product first meant that I could also go in depth and dive deep into what the whole, the product was about, and why such a thing was and has been around in India for such a long time, and focus on educating just coffee lovers. It doesn't have to be, just Indian um, community, but coffee lovers in general, you know on how this coffee is different, and maybe give them a chance to learn more and things like that. Anyway, um, so how did I go about doing it? Well, um, there you go. Sorry. So just before that, so I just took this definition of the Creative Mornings website the other day, just to give you a perspective of what an underdog means. So the expectation has always been, going from a very different background to doing something completely different. The expectation is always not to make it bigger, to actually be successful. For me, it has in a way taken a lot of weight of the fear to perform. um, it's sort of like a boon in itself, because then there is no added pressure for you to actually, you're not living up to anybody's expectation. Your expectation is already quite low, so it's easy to, to pass that and maybe, go beyond it. So I've sort of always liked that aspect of being an underdog. And then how did I go about it? It has been very crucial for me to actually collaborate and even barter, my skills for something, other than. So, like when I say barter, it has been in different ways. Some of the times it's been complementary skills that I've got in operations and marketing, to maybe getting pop-up space. So working with like-minded businesses where I thought, okay, they could use, a hand in, marketing or something that I am good at, which they had to otherwise spend money on. And if they had pop-up space, and we would try and negotiate, or we would try and discuss if we could actually do like a trade, a sort of a cashless sort of thing. When I said profit sharing, sometimes it's been like, so I'm, and I used to try and find, you know, businesses or, cafes or whatever to partner with, where it would be a good fit for both of us. So it probably wouldn't make sense to have a Indian filter coffee, brand being in something that's totally unrelated, where the customers would walk in and they'll be like, uh, what the heck is this? So like they wouldn't. So it has to be like a natural sort of, you come into some place and you see something that is relatable to the Indian culture, and then you see the coffee and then you make that natural connection. Whereas otherwise, it just sort of, uh, it can actually backfire. So anyway, sometimes it has been just exposure in return for being part of a dinner service, like an event, so which is like pre-booked and pre with pre-seating and all that. So just to have a pop-up there and give people an exposure to what Indian filter coffee is about, and the blends and all that. um, a lot of the other times it's been a collaboration, and in a collaboration it's always been about a win-win. And not that all collaborations have worked out really well. Sometimes it's hard to sort of sometimes make things work um, in a collaboration, because sometimes people tend to want different things out of a collaboration once you start doing it. But on the whole, this has been the main way that I've actually grown KAAPI in a very scrappy bootstrap way in the last 3 years. We did an ice cream with an Indian ice cream manufacturer, and we were reaching markets where I was not otherwise in. So he was selling his ice cream in markets which I was not exposed to, and he was obviously, it was a good way for him to reach my audiences, my customers, and people who followed KAAPI to try the ice cream. There were some customers of mine who eventually, I collaborated with, because they were sort of part-time artists, and used to do artwork on the side, and they used to do fundraisers and things like that. And if if I could feature their artwork, and I could help them out in some way, give credit to what they were doing, and obviously they were already buying from me. So this was just me trying to help them out in the way that I could. um, so um, so collaboration and barter. This is bike abs. So with bike abs, again, the it was quite similar the way I started off. I just started helping out with no expectation. Being a startup, there was really not much to gain in the first few months, except for the exposure and experience of working on something cool. So I used to pretty much get paid in coffees and beers and whatnot. But then my skills were quite valuable in taking the business from where it was when we started off as an idea to, and it was starting to go somewhere. In the first 6 months, I started doing some work. So I eventually, got sweat equity in the business, and we, became equal partners. And then in terms of just growing the business, again, we've used things like crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, not just for the money, but it was also a way to find out whether the locals really wanted and liked the idea of having a rickshaw service. So it was also, a confirmation that people wanted what we were doing. We also did a lot of in-kind sponsorships where, we did Transitions Film Festival in exchange for tickets, and which we gave it away to customers of ours who were regulars, or other people, and we had their advertisements on the rickshaws. We also, when we did the street art tours, we also had artist collaborations where we used to feature the artwork of these artists on the back of the rickshaw. Even give them the opportunity to do the tour, so that they could, and some of them, they actually knew a lot of the artists personally, so they could actually talk more about it, and give a lot of information, because a lot of the work is obscure. It's hard. Sometimes you don't know who the artist is, or sometimes you don't know what the idea was behind a particular work of art. So that was also there. So I guess the key takeaways from what is that, like exposure, as I said, that's what opened my eyes to the possibility of doing, I guess, interesting things. And trade skills, especially, crucial when you've got limited experience or funds to chase your dreams. Collaboration works only if you try and find a connection. It's If you try and look for a transactional relationship, or if it doesn't work very well, can end up quite badly. Upskilling, it's always been a thing. When we started bike cabs, I really didn't know how to fix a bike. We went, so changing chains and all sorts of things, changing tubes and fixing chains, broken chains and whatnot. And then with coffee, I'm always learning. There's always something to be learned. But the other good part is, a lot of the times, a lot of these things have been done in another industry, or by people in different countries, or so maybe not in the same context. So obviously there are unique challenges to what you're doing, but you can, as I said before, you can draw parallels from another industry, and find ways to reduce your learning curve. And last but not the least, you can leverage the low expectation of being an underdog. There's little to no fear of failure, because the expectations are low, so that is not an added burden. That's basically it. Thank you.